Let's continue to look at rare king's pawn openings. e4, e5, knight f3, and now an unusual move, d5. This is known as the Elephant Gambit. White's best try against this gambit is taking the pawn on d5. This should secure a strong opening advantage. The main line continues bishop to d6, and this is known as the Marazzi Gambit in the Elephant Gambit. But let's look at some inferior replies first. Black might try to take the pawn on d5, but then play knight to c3 to attack the queen. It has to move somewhere, perhaps a5, and then continue developing naturally with a move like bishop to c4. This resembles the Scandinavian defense, which is e4, d5, e takes d5, queen takes d5. But in this version, black has committed their e-pawn to e5, which is weak and can be lost. So it's an inferior version of the Scandinavian. White has a big lead in development already, so there's no need to look any further. So backing up, another obvious move to look at in this position is e4, moving the pawn forward to save it and attacking the f3 knight. Well, after e4, play queen to e2, pinning the pawn. And the only thing you really have to remember in this position is continue to attack e4. You have the attacking moves d3, knight to c3, for example. So let's look at two possible ways black might try to protect e4. One of them is taking the pawn on d5. But that fails miserably to knight to c3, attacking the queen and the pawn simultaneously. The queen will move away, and white will win the e4 pawn, and be a pawn up, and have a big lead in development. So let's back up. Another try here might be knight to f6 to guard e4, which also attacks the d5 pawn. After that, you can play d3 to continue to attack the e4 pawn. Then queen takes d5 is a reasonable attempt to defend the e4 pawn again. And this time, knight to c3, attacking the queen and the pawn, is not as effective because of the pin bishop to b4. So I recommend playing knight b d2 in this position. And if the bishop comes to b4, you can play c3 to break the pin. So now the pawn on e4 is under attack 3 times. It can be defended one more time with bishop to f5, but black has trouble down the e-file, and his pieces are loose, and white has a superior position. Okay, let's just take a look at one possible continuation to give you a flavor for what might happen. Bishop to f5 to guard the pawn. D takes e4 to take it. One of the minor pieces will probably recapture on e4. Recapturing with the knight is going to lose material immediately because knight to h4 threatens to remove the defender of the knight on e4, and the knight on e4 is also pinned. So white is going to lose a piece in that position. So the only other try is bishop takes e4. But then the game might continue knight to g5. Surprising move, putting the knight on a square where it can be taken. In fact, black is forced to take it since there's no way to guard the pinned bishop. So black takes the knight, but then you win the bishop. The black queen is under attack, so it has to move, but also white is threatening a discovery on the king by moving the knight. So the only move here is queen to e5 to block the file and save the queen. Then you can play knight takes f6 check. Okay, and this serves the purpose of messing up the pawn structure on the king side. Okay, black is forced to recapture with the g-pawn, Now, in addition to having the superior pawn structure, you can get a small lead in development with bishop to f4, attacking the pinned queen. Queens will trade, and you have two minor pieces out. Black has none, and you have the better pawn structure. Okay, so let's back up all the way to the main line of the Elephant Gambit. The Elephant Gambit occurs here after d5. White should take the pawn. Okay, and the main line is bishop to d6. Strange looking move, but it does develop a bishop. It protects e5. It's very solid. Black does not overextend his position by pushing the pawn to e4. He reserves the right to push it to e4 later at an opportune time. So this is actually a little tough to crack. Don't try to outright refute it quickly. Just play sensible moves. Okay, good move in this position is d4. Another possible move is knight to c3, but d4 should follow soon. You do want to attack that e-pawn, and you want to stake your claim in the center, and you want to open the dark squared bishop's diagonal. Okay, so the pawn on e5 is under attack twice now. Black's best try here is probably to push the pawn at this point to e4, attacking the knight on f3. Okay. The recommended move in this position is to put your knight strongly in the center of the board. The pawn on e4 will become weak. You can continue to attack it. You can get your bishop out. Sometimes bishop to b5 check is a useful move. Knight to c3 to attack the pawn. Maybe even c4 in some positions to bolster your center. Castling and putting a rook on e1 to attack the pawn further. All very natural moves. Just be patient. With the knight on e5, there's no threat to kick it away because f6 runs into this tactic, queen to h5 check. Okay, we've seen this tactic many times. If black blocks with the g-pawn, you can take it, and the h7 pawn is pinned. You've got this queen takes rook to follow. Okay, so we'll stop the main line there. This is a strong position for white. Play it sensibly and patiently and attack that e4 pawn. Okay, this was the Elephant Gambit. Thanks for watching.